Official agency records. Unaltered visual proof. Transparent enforcement. This is Bodycam incident reports.
License, registration, and proof of insurance. Hey, look at me when I'm talking to you. Sir, I need you to respond. Unlock this door right now! Out of the car, now!
It was a perfectly ordinary Tuesday afternoon. At 2:30 p.m., the sun was shining brightly over a quiet, middle-class suburban avenue. Gliding along the right lane, at precisely the posted 35-mile-per-hour speed limit, was a faded silver 2010 Toyota Corolla. Behind the wheel sat Derek Tillman. Derek was 28 years old, worked as an internet installation technician, and was simply driving back to his office after his lunch break. He was wearing his standard work attire, a plain gray t-shirt and dark jeans. He was the definition of an ordinary law-abiding citizen. But Derek had one critical advantage. Mounted securely behind his rearview mirror was a high-end dual-channel Dashcam system. It was continuously recording in 4K resolution out the front windshield, while a secondary, wide-angle lens captured the entire interior of the cabin, recording crystal-clear audio of every single breath and movement. Before we watch this patrolman completely destroy his own career and cost his city a massive settlement, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments what city or country you're watching from today. Cruising directly behind Derek's Toyota was a marked police interceptor. Inside were Officer Greg Larson and his partner, Officer Todd Fisher. They were nearing the end of a slow shift. Larson ran the silver Toyota's plates. The registration was completely valid. Derek had no warrants and a clean driving record. Yet, Larson claimed over the radio that the Corolla had swerved over the yellow line and abruptly flipped on his overhead light bar. Inside the Corolla, Derek saw the flashing red and blue lights. He knew he hadn't swerved, but he also knew exactly how these encounters could unfold. Every single word a citizen speaks can be used as a weapon against them. Any sudden movement to find a wallet can be fatally misinterpreted. So, Derek made a conscious, calculated decision. He would exercise his constitutional right to remain silent to the absolute maximum extreme. He would give them nothing to use against him. He executed a flawless pullover into a brightly lit, open strip mall parking lot. He shifted the car into park, turned off the engine, pulled the keys from the ignition, and placed them visibly on the center of the dashboard. He rolled down his tinted window exactly 2 inches. Finally, he placed both of his hands firmly on the top of the steering wheel. He minimized all physical movement and became a statue. Officer Greg Larson stepped out of the cruiser and approached the driver's side door. "Driver, license, registration, and proof of insurance," Larson commanded, leaning his heavy frame toward the glass. The silence inside the Toyota was deafening. Derek didn't flinch. He didn't turn his head to look at the officer. He stared dead ahead through the windshield. The dash cam quietly recorded the ambient street noise and Derek's perfectly calm breathing. Larson's brow furrowed. "Hey, look at me when I'm talking to you. I need your ID right now." Derek remained completely motionless. Zero voluntary movement. Zero verbal response. Larson shifted his weight, leaning even closer to the 2-inch gap, aggressively trying to catch the driver's eye. To the patrolman, this absolute silence wasn't an invocation of a right. In his mind, it was blatant noncompliance. It meant the driver was hiding something, or worse, preparing to fight or flee. "Sir, I need you to respond," Larson stated, his voice dropping to a hard, tense register. A heavy, agonizing 5-second pause hung in the air. Derek just kept staring through the windshield. Larson aggressively adjusted his duty belt. "Listen to me very carefully," he barked, shifting his tone from demanding to overtly threatening. "This is a lawful order. Give me your identification right now, or I will remove you from this vehicle." Derek's hands stayed locked at 10 and 2. He didn't blink. Outside the glass, Larson's hand instinctively dropped to the grip of his baton. The patrolman was no longer asking for an ID. He had made his decision, and he was just waiting for the excuse to break the window. The heavy, suffocating silence inside the silver Toyota Corolla stretched into its third minute. The 4K interior dashcam quietly recorded the rhythmic low hum of the car's dormant air conditioning vents and the incredibly slow, measured breathing of Derek Tillman. His hands remained locked in a rigid, immovable grip at the 10 and 2 positions on the worn leather steering wheel. Outside the 2-inch gap in the tinted glass, the bright Tuesday afternoon sun beat down on the strip mall parking lot. The chaotic, strobing reflection of the police cruiser's red and blue light bar bounced violently off the storefront windows, painting the interior of the Corolla in harsh, alternating flashes of color. Officer Greg Larson took a deliberate half-step back from the driver's side door. The bright sunlight caught the deep flush creeping up his neck. He briefly looked away from the tinted window and scanned the open parking lot. A few pedestrians pushing grocery carts had stopped near the edge of the asphalt, pulling out their smartphones to record the flashing lights. Larson's posture shifted. When he turned back to the Toyota, his gaze had fundamentally changed. He was no longer trying to make eye contact with the man sitting in the driver's seat. He was staring at the vehicle with a flat, detached calculation, looking at the entire scene not as an interaction with a human being, but as a procedural obstacle that needed to be dismantled. Larson stood up straight, squaring his shoulders. He reached up with his left hand and pressed the heavy rubber transmit button on his shoulder microphone. "Dispatch, be advised," Larson announced. He pitched his voice loud, crisp, and highly projected. "Got a non-responsive driver. Refusing lawful commands to ID." A burst of static crackled from the radio on his belt, followed by the dispatcher's robotic acknowledgement. Inside the cabin, the secondary wide-angle lens of Derek's dashcam continuously captured the physical state of the interior. Derek was sitting perfectly upright, his posture textbook. He was fully awake, his eyes tracking forward. He was entirely compliant with the physical requirement of remaining inside his stopped vehicle. He made no sudden movements. He offered no verbal resistance. Larson stepped aggressively back into the 2-inch gap. He unclipped his heavy metal tactical flashlight from his belt and clicked the tail switch. A blinding, high-lumen white LED beam pierced through the tinted glass, illuminating the floating dust particles in the stale cabin air and casting harsh, long shadows across Derek's face. "Driver's got a blank stare. Glassy eyes," Larson stated in that same loud, projected cadence. "Possible impairment here. He might be under something." The 4K interior lens silently documented the details of Derek's face in the glare of the flashlight. His eyes were not glassy, the whites were clear, and his pupils were actively adjusting to the sudden intrusion of the bright light. His brow was smooth, there were no tremors in his jaw, no erratic twitches, no slurred speech, and no scent of alcohol or narcotics filling the enclosed space of the cabin. "Unlock this door right now," Larson demanded, his right hand dropping heavily to rest on his duty belt. "You're acting erratic. This is an officer safety issue." On the opposite side of the Corolla, the heavy crunch of tactical boots on asphalt signaled the arrival of Officer Todd Fisher. Fisher approached the passenger side of the vehicle with his shoulders hunched, his eyes darting across the back seat. He slapped his left hand flat against the rear trunk lid, leaving a clear fingerprint in the thin layer of road dust. He stepped up to the passenger window, raised his own flashlight, and aimed the beam directly through the glass. "He's completely out of it, Todd," Larson called out over the metallic roof of the car. "Watch his hands. He might be reaching for something." Fisher immediately angled his high-lumen beam down, cutting through the shadows to spotlight Derek's lap and the center console. The bright circle of light illuminated Derek's dark jeans, the empty plastic cup holder, and both of his empty hands, which were still locked in a rigid grip at the very top of the steering wheel. Fisher froze. The beam of his flashlight held dead steady on the empty hands for a long, agonizing second. He saw the knuckles turning slightly white from the grip. He saw there was no weapon, no movement, no reaching. Fisher shifted his weight uncomfortably from one boot to the other. He lowered the beam of his flashlight just a few inches, pointing it at the floorboard, but he remained completely silent. The interior dashcam recorded the crossing beams of the two flashlights in Derek's hands, which hadn't moved a fraction of an inch since the engine was turned off. "Derek Tillman!" Larson barked. He was reading the registered owner's name off the glowing screen of the cruiser's data terminal directly behind him. The patrolman's tone dropped its aggressive edge, settling into a cold, mechanical finality. "You are being detained for a DUI investigation." Larson didn't pause to see if the driver would finally speak. He didn't ask another question. He reached to his right hip and unclipped his heavy, expandable steel baton. The metal friction lock snapped open with a sharp, violent clack that echoed across the quiet parking lot. Larson stepped back, squaring his feet, and raised the solid steel rod high above his shoulder, aiming directly for the center of the driver's side window. Inside the silent, locked cabin, Derek Tillman closed his eyes for a fraction of a second, took one slow, deep breath to brace his chest, and waited. The solid steel tip of the expandable baton hit the tempered glass with a deafening crack. The window shattered instantly. Thousands of jagged fragments scattered across the dashboard, filling the cup holders and raining down over Derek Tillman's forearms and lap. The sudden breach sucked the harsh ambient noise of the avenue and the strobing police lights directly into the quiet car. Derek squeezed his eyes shut and turned his head slightly to protect his face from the flying shards, but he kept his hands firmly planted on the steering wheel. He didn't raise his arms to block the strike. He didn't shout. Officer Greg Larson didn't wait for the glass to settle. He immediately swept his baton across the window frame, clearing the remaining jagged pieces. He reached inside, hit the electronic unlock switch, and yanked the heavy door open. "Out of the car! Now!" Larson screamed. He didn't wait for Derek to unbuckle his seatbelt or move. "He's not complying. I'm pulling him out," Larson yelled, loudly projecting the justification for his body camera. He lunged into the driver's seat perimeter, grabbing a handful of Derek's gray t-shirt near the collar and clamping his right hand around Derek's left bicep. Derek knew the mechanics of a physical police extraction. If he tensed his legs, they would claim he was bracing for a fight. If he pulled his arm back, it was active resistance. So Derek exhaled a long breath and went completely limp. He instantly became 185 pounds of dead weight. Larson planted his boots on the asphalt and yanked backward. Derek's limp body barely moved, his center of gravity anchored in the deep bucket seat. The sudden lack of physical tension threw Larson off balance. The patrolman grunted loudly, readjusting his grip and heaving with his lower back just to drag the heavy, unresisting man over the plastic door sill. "Stop pulling away! I said stop resisting!" Larson roared, his face contorted. He was broadcasting the standard verbal commands designed to justify physical force. But the 4K interior dash cam clearly captured Derek's right arm hanging loosely at his side. His sneakers were simply dragging passively across the floor mats. Larson hauled Derek clear of the vehicle's frame. Without the structural support of the car seat, Derek's limp body collapsed. He fell heavily onto the sun-baked asphalt, his weight crunching loudly against the scattered shards of broken window glass. The moment Derek hit the ground, Officer Todd Fisher sprinted around the rear bumper of the Toyota to join the takedown. Larson dropped his full body weight, driving his knee forcefully down into Derek's shoulder blades. Fisher grabbed Derek's relaxed right arm, wrenching it hard behind his back. "Give me your hands! Stop fighting!" Fisher shouted. "Don't move! Give me your hands!" Derek's face was pressed hard against the hot asphalt. A small trickle of blood ran down his cheek from a glass cut. He didn't make a sound. He let his arms remain entirely limp as the officers aggressively ratcheted the cold steel handcuffs around his wrists. Through the open driver's side door, The interior dash cam held an unobstructed view of the asphalt. It silently recorded the two officers frantically shouting conflicting commands at a motionless, bleeding man pinned beneath them. The heavy ratchets of the steel handcuffs clicked into place, locking tightly around Derek Tillman's wrists. Officer Greg Larson remained kneeling on Derek's back for a few more seconds. "Suspect secured," Larson announced loudly, his chest heaving. He stood up, stepping back from the shattered glass on the asphalt. Officer Todd Fisher hauled Derek up by the back of his shirt and the chain of the handcuffs, guiding him over to the front bumper of the police cruiser. He forced Derek to sit on the hot concrete curb. Derek didn't complain about the awkward angle of his pinned arms. He didn't wipe the trickle of blood from his cheek. He simply sat in absolute silence, staring blankly at the pavement between his sneakers. Larson turned sharply back to the open driver's side door. "Conducting a probable cause search," he stated, checking the immediate lunge area. He leaned immediately into the cabin. His heavy boots crunched loudly over the broken safety glass coating the floorboards. His movements were fast, almost erratic. He ripped the plastic lid of the center console open, pulling out a tangle of charging cables, a few crumpled fast food receipts, and a plastic pack of spearmint gum, tossing them carelessly onto the passenger seat. Fisher moved to the passenger side, pulling the door open and dropping to one knee. He reached under the passenger seat, sweeping his gloved hand quickly across the carpet. He pulled out a large, insulated metal water bottle. "Got a container," Fisher called out. He unscrewed the cap, briefly checked the contents, and tipped the bottle. Clear ice water splashed onto the asphalt. Fisher silently screwed the cap back on and dropped the bottle onto the floor mat. The pace of the search accelerated. Larson popped the glove box, dumping the vehicle's registration, owner's manual, and a handful of loose napkins directly onto the floor. He ran his flashlight aggressively along the door panels, checking the narrow side pockets. He wedged his fingers deep between the driver's seat and the center console, pulling out nothing but loose change and dust. The frantic, high-decibel energy of the physical takedown completely drained from the scene. It was replaced by a dense, heavy silence. The officers were no longer shouting commands. The only sounds captured by the interior dash cam microphone were the rustling of paper, the slamming of plastic compartments, and the rapid breathing of the two patrolmen. "Check under the floor mats," Larson muttered. His voice had dropped to a low, strained register. Fisher pulled the rubber mats out of the car and tossed them onto the parking lot. He checked the passenger visor. Larson checked the driver's side visor. The dash cam recorded the two officers slowly standing up and looking at each other over the metallic roof of the ransacked Toyota. A long, agonizing pause hung in the afternoon air. Neither man spoke. Fisher looked down at the empty floorboards, shifting his weight uneasily. Larson slowly lowered his flashlight. He turned his head slightly toward the police cruiser, but deliberately kept his eyes fixed on the heavy metal grille of the push bar, actively avoiding any visual contact with the bleeding, handcuffed man sitting quietly on the curb. The small, blinking blue light of the dual-channel dash cam silently recorded the scattered work cables, the shattered window frame, and the completely empty interior of the silver Corolla. Derek Tillman was processed, booked, and placed in a holding cell. He didn't argue with the booking officers. He quietly requested his phone call, contacted a civil rights attorney, and invoked his right to remain silent. That same evening, Officer Greg Larson sat at a computer terminal in the squad room and typed his official incident report. Under penalty of perjury, Larson documented glassy eyes and an altered mental state. He wrote that the suspect actively resisted by pulling his arms away and bracing his legs against the floorboard. He formally charged Derek with obstruction of justice, resisting arrest, and suspicion of DUI. Officer Todd Fisher signed his name at the bottom of the page as the corroborating officer. 72 hours later, Derek's attorney sat in a fluorescent-lit conference room with an assistant district attorney and a lead investigator from Internal Affairs. The attorney placed a small flash drive on the table. He didn't make a speech. He simply pressed play on the unedited 4K interior dashcam footage. The IA investigator leaned close to the monitor. He watched Derek's hands remain locked at the 10 and 2 positions. He watched Derek's clear eyes and slow breathing. When the video reached the window breach, the investigator reached out and clicked the mouse, rewinding the physical extraction 3 separate times. He watched Derek's sneakers drag passively across the floor mats. He watched the right arm hang completely loose. Nobody in the room said a word. The system didn't turn overnight. It took 4 days of closed-door reviews and internal hesitation before the district attorney's office quietly filed a motion to dismiss all criminal charges against Derek. That same afternoon, Internal Affairs pulled Larson and Fisher into separate interview rooms. An IA detective slid a physical copy of Larson's signed police report across the metal table, then turned a laptop around and hit play on the hidden dash cam footage. Fisher watched the screen as his own flashlight swept across Derek's empty, motionless hands. He slowly dropped his gaze to the table and stopped answering questions. In the other room, Larson sat frozen. He stared blankly at the monitor, watching the exact moment his written narrative became a provable, documented lie. Both officers were stripped of their badges and service weapons, placed on administrative leave pending a formal disciplinary and criminal review for filing a false official statement. 2 weeks later, Derek's attorney filed a civil rights lawsuit against the city. The municipal legal team pushed back initially. They sent a standard response, offering a low-tier payout contingent on a strict non-disclosure agreement. Derek's attorney declined the offer within an hour, formally filing the motion to take the raw dash cam footage before a public jury. The city's hesitation vanished. Bypassing the lengthy litigation phase entirely, the Municipal Risk Management Board authorized a quiet, 7-figure settlement to keep the incident from going to trial. Derek Tillman sat in the quiet conference room of his attorney's office. He read through the final settlement document, picked up a pen, and signed his name on the bottom line. This is exactly why you never argue your case on the side of the road. Derek Tillman let his camera be his witness. Do you think officers caught falsifying reports should face automatic jail time? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to see more real cases of accountability and justice, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe out there.
This briefing is now complete. For more factual case reviews, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching Bodycam Incident Reports.